Hey everyone. Thanks for listening to Event Mavericks, a place where we challenge assumptions and garner solutions in event management. Let's dive in.
I'm Rachel Fusco, along with Sarah Kale. We're going to practice that last name a little bit throughout the episode because she's going with her husband back to his homeland in Turkey coming up in a couple weeks. So we need to get the accent down. But anyway, this particular episode today, we're going to get into our adventure and our participation in IRF, which is the Incentive Research Fund, their big invitational, which happens on an annual basis. So we're excited to get into that for today, talk through a couple of different topics and then experiences. So I guess here we go. I don't know, Sarah, do you want to take the first little point or does it matter?
Yeah, no, we can start. I thought it would be good to start with kind of comparing to, for those that haven't been, comparing maybe perhaps to BizBash. IRF to BizBash. I think it's kind of good to talk about the differences. I know personally, BizBash is very specific. You have your appointments, you know who you're seeing, where I feel like IRF is very much a free for all and there's no appointments. It's educational. So it feels a little bit more relaxed in that sense, which can be nice because it feels a little bit like a vacation in a way.
Yeah.
But not because you're still obviously working. Those of that go to conferences know that
you're on.
And then even then you still have your work to do when you get back to your room. Your job doesn't stop. So, but I think it's good going into it, knowing that what to expect and what, you know, how it's different.
Right. And I think probably just a call out to in general is, so when you're talking about industry events, right, there's so many different industry events. So for those who are more veteran, you have your site, your MPI, your PCMA, your IMEX, and all of these. And then you have IRF, and there's so many industry events. And then for those who are newer, I mean, there's an assortment. And it's just interesting because I know IRF is educational based, right? So there's education sessions and breakouts and things that we'll get to later. But there's this underlining vibration that you're still there to network and establish, or not establish, but at least start partnerships and relationships for being there, which you could probably carry through every industry event depending. So as we progress through the year, you'll hear us talk about, because we're participating in site. We're actually going to SEMA this year. So you're going to hear about a lot of these different things. And then just leaning into what Sarah said, BizBash, when you go, there's still that level of participation, right? It's industry folks, but the difference there is that the purpose there is different. Education is secondary in some ways, with the networking and sales and business propositions being primary. So I think those are probably the biggest differences that we experienced. You put on a different, I guess, sales hat or engagement hat when you go to IRF than you do at BizBash. I don't know how to explain it, but it's
hard
different.
to explain. Yeah, because we talked about it's more of a slow burn. It's not, if you were to go into IRF and be like very aggressive from a sales standpoint, people would be like, what's going on? Yeah, it would be a turn off, huge turn off.
It's almost like a meeting of the minds at IRF. Yeah. It's interesting versus like BizBash, although we thoroughly loved it and had a great time.
Oh yeah.
In our previous episode, if you guys want to go back and listen to it, but ultimately it was because you knew what you were going for. Everyone knew it.
Yeah.
So everyone had a different headspace, a different level of engagement. They were to get shit done.
Yes, exactly.
And then here at IRF, it was more of catching up with old friends.
Yes. Which isn't a bad thing though, because you're meeting new people and you're building relationships more naturally as opposed to I'm there to get business. So it feels a little bit more authentic in a way at IRF, I guess you could say, but you're not going to see the results. You're not going to leave IRF being like, I closed a deal, but that's not a bad thing though, because I feel like it's going to be, over the course of a year, you're going to build these friendships and relationships. And it's more about like building them over the course of your career. I feel like, cause like we talked about, there's a lot of veterans that go to IRF. I mean, people that have been there 10, 15, 20 years, and there's a lot to learn from them as well.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point. So for myself, this is my second year attending IRF. And then for Sarah, this is technically like 1.5. She supported last year when it was in Vegas, but this was her first full-time attendance. And just for context, so that's to IRF. That doesn't necessarily make us not veterans, because in the industry between the two of us, we're almost at like we're almost at 50 years
Do we
between
want
the
to say
two
that?
of us. Yeah, really. Of combined experience. So that's also something to consider, is going in with your level of experience in the industry, but yet you're still new to this sort of
organization,
like club interaction. Yes. Where you're trying to engage. So I thoroughly enjoy it every time. But it's interesting and a very different experience.
Yes.
So that's just some comparisons between BizBash and then our experience there, and then ultimately IRF. And then we have two others. What's the other one? SK.
The next topic we were going to talk about is, hold please, is how to navigate going. So if you decide you're going to go to IRF, which it is an invitational, so you do have to be invited. We should probably explain that too a little bit. And then how to go in, preparing yourself, and how to navigate it.
Yeah. So we for Imprint sponsored it. So this year we're a gold sponsor, which includes a little bit of that includes obviously our participation throughout the year with other varied areas of sponsorship. So that's part of it. It is invitational. They're really particular about their invitees, which I really appreciate. They try to keep the supplier to buyer ratio lower. So they try to make sure that there's relevant sponsors. There's, so it's a pretty coveted participation piece, which is great. So I think there's that sort of curated experience that sort of enhances that. And then when it comes to navigating, if you're going for the first time, obviously make sure you're signing up for the first timers reception, which is sort of welcoming, et cetera. But I think some of the things to bear in mind when you're going is, and we're going to get into some of these things as we kind of progress through, but like making sure like it's okay to be new. Yeah. And I've noticed that because of the level of being a veteran there, people like a lot of the attendees enjoy like talking with you, kind of showing you the ropes. So there's that inclusivity on some level, which is great. So the navigation of it's fairly easy. It can feel, depending on your level of experience, it can feel overwhelming. I brought a past client with us this last time, and for her, she was navigating it pretty well all on her own, and enjoyed the more sort of relaxed itinerary versus like serious education where it's like education all day, every day. So she appreciated the bits and pieces of like being able to break mentally and then come back and sort of collaborate and like laugh. So that was a good blend, I would say. So I don't know what other advice.
Well, and that's why when I said earlier, it feels like quote unquote, and I don't want for bosses listening when I say vacation, that's what it felt like, because it's more of a relaxed itinerary. Normally it's go, 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 and they're so exhausting, where they do a really good job of setting the pace to be, it's reasonable, I feel like. I think what you said is really important too. As a sponsor, Imprint sponsors the new to IRF reception. And so if you are listening and you're thinking about, becoming a member and coming to IRF next year, which by the way, can we say where it is? Is that public information yet?
Yeah, it is public
It's in Cancun, so obviously amazing. I'm a huge fan of Cancun. I love Cancun. Beach is amazing. Water's amazing. So we highly recommend coming next year. But it's they really do focus on trying to commingle you with veterans. So right off the bat, the new to IRF reception isn't just newbies. It's you're intermingled with veterans. You meet people right off the bat so that throughout the week you see familiar faces, which I think is important because like you said, it can be very overwhelming. And I think also going into it knowing that, kind of like you would for any conference, knowing what education sessions you want to attend, and being prepared, like we have a cabana day, that's always fun, but there's so many, like who are the properties you really want to visit with if you're a planner, right? I really want to see Four Seasons. I really want to meet with Fairmont. Like just going in prepared. I think that's the most important. But again, I think that, and Rachel talked about this too. I know you're going to talk to IRF about it, even expanding upon like the newbies. How can we make it even better for them? And you had some great ideas. So hopefully they'll implement those next year and make it even a more positive experience. I think it helps a ton.
Yep. That would be great. And then I think really for our final bit, which this is not obviously a long episode, these are just sort of tidbits, was I think recommendations is what we kind of had on our list for, and what's wonderful, right? So because it's incentive and it's data-based, which I love data, they survey. So we were able to complete a survey. So a lot of what's being shared is already in our survey results. So it's nothing new, but I would say on the breakout portion, one of the things that I think both Sarah and I walked away with, but I know me for myself, is it would be really awesome to, while the breakout topics are really good, it's almost like, to Sarah's, you made this point, and I thought it was an excellent point, of branching out of our industry. So if you're going to talk about AI, branch away from that and get in some very specific, like AI experts on some level, and maybe think outside the box a little bit. Or if we're talking about surprise and delight, for example, was one of the breakouts. And while the ideation in there was great, and they kind of had this like roundtable where people were working together, depending on your level of expertise or experience, you could have felt like maybe the ideas were redundant, or they could have been brand new ideas, depending on how long you've been in the industry. It would be nice to have an outside voice come in and share what they would think a surprise and delight would be, because ultimately, isn't that who we're targeting? So I thought that was brilliant that you brought that up. I know.
People say I'm the Einstein of our generation.
It happens. It happens. And we here at Imprint are so fortunate, because what would we do without Sarah Kale and her brilliancy as it relates to this? It's a lot. I mean, I will tell you.
So many people just stopped listening.
I am breathless.
They're like, I can't with this.
I'm sure most people are like, I don't, okay. They're like, move on. Move on. Okay. So moving on. I know. One of the other things I think we talked about is, because it is data focused, which this is for me. Okay. So I will full on tell you, I get real excited when it comes to data, because data tells a story. If you're willing to take the time to look at it and read it. The other piece of it too is it really instills confidence. So for those of you listening, lean into your data. It provides confidence when you are presenting, or even
making decisions,
like getting up against objections when it comes. Yes, it helps with vanity metrics. If everyone's just used to always going off of vanity metrics, you really don't have a great sense, because then it's all opinion based and point of view based without actually knowing the data. So that's my soapbox. You're welcome. Beyond that, we were talking about like how fun would it be if there were breakouts that talked about specific data sets, and there was this collaborational group between buyers, partners, suppliers,
like a round table kind of format.
Data sets, like yes, like where did that come from? Do we want to solve to this? How did this enlighten you from every perspective? Because obviously buyers would have a different perspective on the data sets versus suppliers and partners. So that was something too that, again, we shared. I think we both shared in our post-event survey, like to get those. I mean, if the incentive research fund is based off of data, that's what they do, right? The incentive market, bring that to the table and break out and have these like
dig into it,
collaborative brainstorming. Yes. I think workshops, I think people would eat that up, or maybe it would just be me.
I love that stuff too. And I think that's good though. I think it's nice to offer different formats. So instead of just sitting and listening, you have different tracks, right? So if you just want to sit and listen, and maybe you're more, introverted, and you're not one that maybe wants to speak up, you can go to those sessions. But if there is more, you want to be more collaborative and interactive, there are some roundtable sessions that you can attend. And I love that they send these surveys out, because right afterwards, because it's so easy to think of what they could have done differently instead of what they did great. It's so, how people always complain instead of sending out positives, and not complaining, they did a great job. But I think it's fresh in your mind. And we were talking about it like on our flight home. And so it's like, okay, this is, maybe they could try this different just to freshen it up. That's any conference. That's not them. They did a fantastic job. So, but I think the roundtable format's a great idea too, because you really can, because normally it's just the Q&A at the end, right? So if you're going into a 45-minute session, the whole session could be, interacting with each other. So that, and almost in your little tables. So it's not like the whole session. You break it up into 3 groups, and everybody gets a chance to talk and collaborate, ask questions, dig in. That would be a great way to, and like you said, because it is data driven, let's dig into the data.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so overall it was a really good experience. And I'm going to call out our little friend Taylor Fane, because I think she's going to be listening to this episode. I know. So a little shout out to her, but we were talking about it afterwards too, just in general. Like, it's fun to connect, because I think, just to kind of close out the overarching piece of the IRF, is you really connect to people through the business here. It's less like prospecting / promotion / hard sales. It's more of you really engage with people through business industry conversation.
I do too.
Which I appreciate on some level. And so that was really fun for us as we maneuvered through different crowds of people and just listening to them and their struggles and all the things. So yeah, I would say overall it was really exciting. I'm excited because the leadership forum is coming up, which is in the fall. I don't remember the date exactly. It's in Aspen. So we'll be in attendance there. And then we'll have some feedback coming up for all these other events that we're doing. Sarah's going to
how do you say it? Is it Newfoundland?
Newfoundland.
When I'm there, I would say
Newfoundland.
When I'm there, I'm going to find out because I'm dying to know. Is it Newfoundland, Newfoundland? I'll get clarification for those that are listening and dying to know.
I just want you guys all to know that the dogs are called
Newfies. There we go. There we go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's Newfoundland dogs. They look like oversized St. Bernards.
Yep. They are cute.
They're super cute. They come out of that the lab up in that area. Anyways, so I'm going to just say that
I'm
Sarah's
going to
Newfie
in Canada for those of you that don't know.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
All the things. Anyways, I believe that's probably it for our episode. Short, sweet. Just down to the point with IRF. Thanks for those of you who are joining us. Just a little tidbits moving forward. We've got a couple of guest speakers lined up. Sarah doesn't know that. I'm just throwing that out there because So we've got a couple. I've already reached out to them. So in our future episodes, we have a couple of more folks coming on to just get into the nitty gritty in a couple of different spaces. AV is one of them.
That's a good
Procurement
one.
is another one.
I'm slacking. I guess I got to find some,
to do that too. So
You trying to show me up, Rachel? I'm going to do it.
Do it.
Well,
no, I was literally reaching into my Rolodex for those of you who even know what that is.
The younger ones are like, what?
I had to dust it off.
Phone.
I don't even know what that is. What's
Although before we sign off on this, I do want to earlier before we got started. I was saying we should have cocktails on one of these, and our producer said we're not allowed to have cocktails on our podcast unless we get an alcohol sponsor. So for those of you listening, if you would like be a sponsor for those that have martinis, shaken not stir, anything, we would like to have cocktails. The producer will not allow it unless it's sponsored. So we're waiting. Yes.
On the rocks, no ice.
So I don't have a favorite. So whatever.
No, who wants that was wrong.
Sign up.
It's on the rocks, no salt. Yes, please do. We're happy to support your alcohol adventures. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you around next time.